Hello, YouTube. Today I just want to bring you my leaguestart guide, quote unquote, for the hardcore season of Tortured Infinite. So for any of you that aren't aware, they are bringing out a new Unbound season. And for this Unbound season, it's bringing some special, affixes, I guess, to the game. And one of the special things that's going to happen this season is for every 3 meters of movement that you make, your main skill will trigger once. And this can go up to 10 times a second. So you can go down to triggering your main skill every 0.1 seconds. And I did calculate how much movement speed you need to do that if you were to not use a mobility skill. I don't have any reason to believe that mobility skills won't work for this, but I have set up my build without the use of a mobility skill, even though I do think in-game we'll probably run a mobility skill in tandem with all this movement speed. With that being said, I'm first going to show you the defense, and then I'm going to show you the offense and tree breaking, all those things. So our eventual build that we want to do in the end game is going to be most likely a Mask of Infernal Iron, Flaming Evil, Magnus Law setup. The reason I say most likely is you'll see a note down here below. We might have to drop Flaming Evil in late game just because we want to scale more defense to make sure that we get all of our converts and stuff going. But during this setup, if we were to use Mask of Infernal Iron, it does come with this line, converts 100% of cold and lightning damage taken to fire, which means that the only res we have to scale is fire res, which goes very well with Flaming Evil, because with Flaming Evil, we can then just go fire res on every single item in the build. I'm not fully convinced about Flaming Evil. I think it's going to be a good option early game, but I do think in the late game, it's probably just going to be whatever, and you're just going to drop it. Once you get Lone Walkers, I think you'd rather just drop Flaming Evil. And then on top of that, we're going to be running a Magnus Laws, because Magnus Laws works very well with Convert, because doing Tenacity Blessing stacking is not only going to give us a ton of fire damage, some flat fire damage, which both of these are very potent, it's also going to give us access to the main talent Rock, which lets us convert 5% of first damage taken to fire for every Tenacity Blessing stack we have. And we're going to reach upwards of 14 stacks in this build, so quite a lot of the converts can be done just by Rock. With that being said though, our defenses in this build is going to be 90 max res. We're going to convert all our fizz and erosion damage taken to fire. And obviously we already have all of our cold and lightning converted to fire. We're going to do Tenacity Blessing stacking, which Tenacity Blessing stacking in of its own is very, very potent. Each of these Tenacity Blessings also gives 4% DR. And if you want to, you can also go for Sacrifice, which is then also going to give you 8% additional damage. So this is not a more offensive option that we can go for instead. But that's going to just depend on how much damage we need actually once we get into Hardcore. Because obviously you only get 1 life. Staying alive is very important. Then on top of that, we're going to scale Armor's defense. This is done very, very well by the Brave Tree. Because the Brave Tree has insane nodes in it, such as 6% armor per stack of Tenacity Blessing. When you have 14, or when you have 10 plus blessings, this is a lot of armor percent we're gaining. It has access to Resolve, which gives us 4% additional armor per stack of Tenacity Blessing, which is very potent. And just in general, this tree itself does give us off just base armor and armor percentage. Brave is one of the strongest early game trees in this game for defense. If you don't mind just giving up a tree's worth of damage, which given the event and given the fact that our movements is going to turn into damage, I do think this is going to be something we're able to do. The Brave is one of the strongest trees in the game as a defense scaler. Also, God of Might is extremely potent because in God of Might you have access to this node. 2% life regen speed per stack of Tenacity Blessing owned, and regen life per stack of Tenacity Blessing owned. This is very, very nice. This is just a ton of life regen. I'm not 100% sure if this life regeneration speed means that we're regenerating 2% of our life per second, or if it's just the speed at which regen, which is kind of a bit of a weird wording, but regardless, especially early on, even if you only have 5 stacks, regenerating 125% of your life, on top of having the 2% life regen here is quite nice. So yeah, we'll have access to some insane regen. Now, the ways we're going to cap out our fire res, because obviously you do need to get to 90 max res, is we're going to use Microfate's max res fire res. These are very potent. You can obviously also get it on your memories, although that most likely is not going to be possible in this build. And you can also get it on your Flaming Evil and stuff. But the main source is going to have to be from Microfates. There's also, of course, a, fire res slate mod that you can pick up in the Warlord tree. 4% max fire res. You can get this on your slate early on as a alternative defense lace. So with all of that being said, we can also then use a Vorax chest or a Vorax helm and get minus 4% dot damage taken on the helm, just as an extra safety layer for dots in particular. And most likely we'll either want to turn off Flaming Evil or a Mask of Infernal Iron into a Vorax item in this build. So with all that said, Tenacity Blessings, you can get 2 per ring. You can have the base affix give you a Tenacity Blessing, and then ring ultimate mode give you a Tenacity Blessing for 4 total. You can get 1 per weapon. We might end up using a shield in the build. If we do use a shield, which this is just going to depend on if we drop Flaming Evil or not, which is why I think dropping Flaming Evil is probably going to be worth it in late game. If you use a shield, you do not get a Tenacity Blessing, but you do get Convert on the shield, which is quite nice. You can get +2 on Sate, obviously using a Nether King Judgment. You'll get +1 on Tree, you'll get +1 from Momentum, which Momentum is obviously going to be a staple for this build to give us Tenacity Blessing generation. And then we have baseline 4, so that's a total of 14, which of those 14, you'd already have 70% Convert. But realistically, like, you know, we'll aim more for like just having 10 stacks early on in this build, because getting to that many stacks is quite difficult. It's quite hard to reliably say we will have that many. And all of these are not only going to give us a ton of damage with Magnus Laws, but we'll get a lot of first convert with Rock, which is really nice. Now, as for our year choice, it's either between Gem of 3 or Sage. I think there's benefits to both. If you do choose Gem of 3 though, she does have a benefit of having access to 20% first convert to fire. And for that reason alone, I think Gem of 3 is the only one that can realistically play Flaming Evil in the end game. I think for Sage, you do need to drop Flaming Evil just because she doesn't have, you know, you won't be able to get enough convert if you play Sage. With that being said, if you play Gem of 3, this Dress Liquor gives you 20% first convert, and it also gives you it also converts your first damage into fire damage, which is quite nice. Because otherwise you need to get that on in the tree. In the late game, we do obviously want to fit in the Lone Walkers, but, you know, that's gonna be a while. These items are at least somewhat reasonable to get, like, in the first few days. I don't know how long it takes people to get Lone Walkers. It took me 2 days, this league start. But with all of that said, you know, there's just a lot of yapping that basically is me just talking about whether or not we would fit Flaming Evil or not. I think once you do get Lone Walkers, you kind of have to drop Flaming Evil for Price's Chest. And if you drop it for Price's Chest, you would then go for Varrock's Helmet, which does negate this big downside of Mask of the Infernal Iron. But it also comes at the cost of losing Fire Infiltration, which doesn't really matter, let's be honest. You can just pick it up in the tree either way. This is all defense talk. How are we scaling our damage? Very simple. We're going to be playing Rain of Arrows. I think Rain of Arrows is one of the strongest skills in the game. Back in the day when Rhythm went down to 0.2 second, like activation medium, Rain of Arrows was consistently one of the cheapest builds in the game to clear SS20 with. People did it every season. They did budget builds of Rain of Arrows using a 0.2 Rhythm. In this event, we will have a 0.1 Rhythm in Essence once we get enough movement speed. So I think that, you know, doubling the damage of your Rain of Arrows is going to be very, very strong. But to max out the 0.1 Rhythm, you need to get 361% movement speed. I can showcase the math for this, but essentially, every 100% movement speed equals... So every 100% movement speed equals 6.5 meters of movement, and your character baseline already has 100% movement speed. So you need to get a 361% bonus movement speed, because 6.5 multiplied by 4.61 gives you 30. And that's how you get a 0.1 Rhythm, assuming you never break stride. So how are we getting this movement speed? Well, we have a few options. We can break Preserve of Eternity. We can obviously go Scorpion Distillate. Scorpion Distillate is very powerful for Rain of Arrows, because Rain of Arrows will double dip thanks to Swift Flight. This Swift Flight does double dip with projectile speed. We can get 4 Year Memories with movement speed. So the way we would do that is that we would buy orange Year Memories with movement speed rolls on them, and then get one of them with like the base that gives you an extra Year Memory slot, and get movement speed on that one as well. So very, very similar to what I'm already doing in the game right now, with like the 3rd slot. But instead of plus year traits, you would just do movement speed. And then, you know, Preservers give us 68, Memories give us 80, Boots with T1 mod and Haste and Max Roll gives you 48% as well as 8% additional. Attack Aggression, like if you use Kitty Pet, or if you have Attack Aggression somewhere else in the build, gives you 10%. Level 20 Precise Swiftness with Aura Amplification, nothing else, gives you 23. If you have a module with Haste Protocol in it, you get 20%. You can get 18% from the tree. Like pretty much every like starter tree has some form of this, where it's like 6% and 12% movement speed, which does include God of Might, which has it here and here, which is going to give us another 18%. And adding all this up, we get to like 288%. I think realistically, early on in the game, you can get to 200 to 250% pretty easily, which is going to be like having a 0.3, 0.2 Rhythm, which that is like way, way, way stronger than what you would normally have in Tarmok 7 and things. So this should absolutely demolish like the early game. And as long as you just don't die, like, you can just farm T7s and then move to T8s and farm T8s and slowly get your effort together to push into Profound. And then to compensate for the last bit of this movement speed, we can either go into like Elixirs if we're playing Sage, or we can go just movement speed on Kismets. Obviously, movement speed on Kismet is a very potent option. And in this event, we're gonna have infinite micro destinies that we can do, as well as infinite like Kismets and things. So, you know, you can just go kind of crazy with your movement speed. I do have two outlines here for like different paths you can follow. So if you are playing Sage, I do suggest that you do just the standard Sage start of going Goddess of Knowledge into going Prophet early game. Like just play like you would how I played on leaguestart. But once you get to like the mid game, like once you get done with the campaign, you're in like time mark 2, time mark 3 and stuff. If you drop a bow or like a first weapon or anything like that, you can actually consider equipping that and then swapping over to Rain of Arrows. So you can drop Chromatic Shot and just swap to Rain of Arrows once you get like some first weapons to just have some first damage to scale Rain of Arrows. I do think that option is probably going to be stronger than Chromatic Shot, but you know, it's very hard to know for sure without playing or like having access to the game yet. But if you do that swap, I suggest this tree progression for Sage. So I would do Goddess of Hunting initially. The reason for is very obvious. Goddess of Hunting is a very nice tree for movement speed. We'll get Hasten for movement speed. We'll get 3 Birds, 1 Stone, which is very potent for... Actually, we'll probably go Rushed for Rain of Arrows. We're gonna just have, like, you know, additional damage when you use mobility skill. You're gonna have movement speed, just various movement things as well as projectile speed to get yourself started. But the real reason we're doing Goddess of Hunting is so that we can get access to Marksman. Because we want to get Marksman ASAP to pick up the Gale. Gale is going to be very important. And then for your third tree, you're going to go Warlord. And the reason you go Warlord is very simple. You need to pick up this first to fire convert. And you want to pick up True Flame ASAP. True Flame is very, very overtuned. And getting this early on with firing is very, very strong. Just having any affliction effect just makes True Flame extremely potent. And we definitely want access to that ASAP. With that being said, for Sage, you can also go God of Might into Warlord, into Marksman, as you would with Gemma. I think it really doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter. The main reason you go God of Might on Gemma is for this life regen nodes. But if you play Sage, you would just use a life potion either way. So you might as well just go Goddess of Hunting, because Goddess of Hunting is gonna have more damage. Because Rain of Arrows is a dex skill, so having access to dex is very potent. And then obviously, you know, Haste is really good, and Permanence is really good, Rush is really good, etc. But as I said, for Gemma 3, I would suggest God of Might, Warlord, Marksman. And if your last tree, if you're playing Gemma, you can just go Ranger and get some crit. Ranger is a very potent tree, very, very strong tree, especially in the early game. And for Sage, you kind of do need to pick up still Vanguard at some point, so Vanguard's very potent. It gives you Elixir skill, gain charging progress. You can max out your Swiftness Dew if you use Swiftness Dew early on. Although most likely you won't, you'll just use Thirst Dew. And it gives you some elixir effect to scale your trait, you know, just basic Sage stuff. So with all that being said, I can't make the choice for you. I don't know which is going to be better. I think Sage is going to be extremely played. I think I think 80% of the player base is going to be on Sage. And I'm kind of leaning towards Gemma at the moment. I kind of want to do Gemma instead, just because it's something different. But Sage is going to be very potent. Sage is very strong. She is a very obvious choice. I just imagine that all of her shit is going to be really expensive, and getting the build set up on Sage is going to just be more annoying and harder. If you play Sage, I suggest going Preserver of Eternity, Elixir of Ferris, and Firewing. If you play Gemma, you can then do Preserver, Firewing, and Kitty Express. But yeah, that's going to be it from me, YouTube. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope this gives you some inspiration for your league start. If you do play Gemma, you want to pick up Times to Born and Fire early game. That, along with just having some life regen like on the train things, should sustain you and keep you alive. And if you are ever scared on either of these two characters, if you ever want some early game defense, the Brave Tree is like a built-in 35% DR early game. Just going Brave Tree, picking armor, Tenacity Blessings armor, and just like taking all of these armor nodes that's in this tree and going Ember armor is a very, very, very potent way to get to like 35-40% DR early game. And just that is so overkill for Trav 7. Like, you will be fine. But this video is more targeted at people that want to not just do Trap 7 and actually play the hardcore event. Yeah, I want to play this event a lot. I want to never die, though. One thing I'll quickly talk about doing this setup and stuff and Tenacity Dew. I am building around this setup instead of Tenacity Dew because I don't like Tenacity Dew because it's inconsistent. It doesn't always give you 90 max stress, and I don't want to die because my Tenacity Dew decided to give me only 80% max stress. I would rather have a defense layer that does not have RNG to it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you with your league start. Bye-bye, YouTube. Bye-bye.